Hi, guys. Welcome to Motherish. So, in today's episodes, we sit down with journalist and mother Sheli Muñiz, who opens up about the emotional weight that comes with reporting tragedy, trauma, and breaking news. From standing in front of a crime scene to holding back tears on live TV, Shelley shares the very real, very human side of journalism, but also the compassion behind being a mom and on camera.
We read the books, we bought the things. We thought we were ready. And then life took our plans and changed them. I'm Karen, I'm Victoria's mommy, and I work in tech.
And I'm Pamela. I have a baby boy named Ford, and I'm a journalist. And although we're both first-time working moms, we're actually pretty different.
And that's totally okay. Because we both agree that our most important work is raising our kids. We really need each other and can only get through this together. Welcome to Motherish Moments.
Pamela, you know this just as well as I do, so I'm excited.
I actually got emotional just reading that. I've been an emotional mess all week.
I can imagine.
I also think welcome, Shelley.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me.
I also think, I don't know if it happens to you, but I think we try so hard not to cry on camera, not to get too emotional. So I feel like
Yeah. Where's the tissue box? So we need to have one ready.
People always ask us, I think, I don't know if it happens to you, but, is it hard? Like, how do you do it? How do you do it, especially after becoming a mom? And I don't know if it's made me tougher, if I'm more aware of it now. So I'm definitely more emotional since I became Ford's mom. But, it's made me more aware of it. So I feel like I'm fighting it back more. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yes. But don't you feel as though your storytelling is even more powerful because you understand a mother's love? And so when you're talking about, you were just in Texas, and I want to hear so much about that because I can only imagine as a parent leaving your child to go there and talking to families who are just waiting for answers, waiting for anything. You could tell their stories because you understand in a different level. How was that for you? I'm so curious.
Yeah. So before we dive in, why don't we start with a motherish moment of
Okay.
the week? We always have this tradition. So it could be a high or low with any of your children, and I'll start so you get a sense of our motherish moment. So my motherish moment this week actually had to do with travel, right? With having to say goodbye to Ford.
Yeah.
Now the older they get, the more questions they ask. Before it was, okay, mom has to go to work. I'm going, I'll be right back. And he'll ask me, how many moons? He counts the moons, so he knows the days. This is when he was younger, and we kind of just stuck with it. How many moons? So I'm like, oh, probably between like 2 or 3 moons, and then mom will be back. He's like, okay, well, that seems like a lot. I don't know. He felt like it was a lot this time. He said, where are you going? And I'm like, I'm going to Texas. And he's like, okay, what for? So all these questions get harder to answer because you always want to be honest. I never want to lie to him. So you kind of want to break, this traumatic thing that happened in a way that he would understand why it's important for me to be there.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, something really bad happened, and kind of simplify, like this river, over, like, says Bordeaux. I don't even know how you say that in English. Like it flooded, and it swept away a lot of homes, and a lot of families were inside those homes, and we're trying to help them find them. So he's like, okay. And then I was like, it was a Christian camp, and he had just gone to summer camp with church for the first time. And then he was like, well, what did Jesus let that happen? And it was like one of the first times where, like, I didn't know what to say. I kind of just, like, I stayed quiet, and I gave him a kiss. I'm like, okay, well, I have to run. And then I kind of asked, like, my pastor, and I had a friend, and I was like, he really caught me off guard, because those are questions that we ask also, like. And then I got a few good responses that I eventually had a conversation with him when I got back. But is having to say goodbye during those work trips that are becoming harder and harder because he's getting older, and he's asking more questions. And he's, at the end, I'm always like, look, mom's trying to, help other people, and kind of explaining to him the purpose behind our work. And he was like, okay, so yeah, so that was my motherish moment of the week.
And that was such a lesson for him to see. You're serving the community, and you're serving those in
Yeah,
Texas.
I don't know if he fully gets it yet,
Yeah.
but I'm trying to, like, teach him slowly.
Yeah.
So what was your mother's
I
moment?
have a 4-year-old boy and a 1.5-year-old daughter. And we always do affirmations. I am strong, I am brave, I can do this. You never really know if he actually listens to me when I'm doing them, but I have him repeat it. And the other day we were at a new playground area and I saw him about to take a jump. And he was a little nervous about taking that jump, but I saw him from afar and he said to himself some of those affirmations. I could do this. And I thought, oh my goodness, I peaked. I peaked. Like he actually listens to what we say,
They
right?
do.
So that for me was just such a moment and such a reflection and testament that they are listening as much as they don't listen to us sometimes.
They do. They do. It's so funny because I do affirmations since I was young and I do them every night. And now he rolls his eyes like, I know. I'm brave and I'm strong and I'm a good friend. I'm a good son. I'm like, okay. But I'm like, I'm sticking to it. I'm not giving up.
Yeah.
I think it's like rolling his eyes.
And who's to say when they're at school that he's not saying that to himself in a situation where he's unsure of
They're
himself?
listening. I
And they're
know.
listening.
They are. This is amazing. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, Shelley? For those who don't know you, she's a household name here in South Florida. I love watching you on the air, and I love watching you mother now through social media. So I think we've gotten a good balance of who Shelley is on camera and who Shelley is behind camera. And that's great. I think everyone likes to feel connected in that sense. But why don't you tell us about like, why did you choose journalism, number one? Why is South Florida important to you? And how did that change? What is the after and before and after becoming a mom?
Yeah. So I got into this business. I was always la metida, the nosy one who had a lot of questions when I was little. And when I grew up, I just used it to my advantage. I like to talk and I like to bring people the information that they didn't know. And so I did the morning news when I was little in elementary school, doing the lunch menu and pretending I was doing the forecast when I would see it on television. So then I went to school for it at the University of Florida, graduated and bopped around those cities where we have to do those markets. Eventually coming back here to South Florida. That's where my family, we were raised here in South Florida after being born in Atlanta. So this
I don't
was...
think I knew you grew up in South Florida.
Yeah, in
Wow,
West Palm
that's
Beach.
amazing.
Yes,
Nice.
in Palm Beach County. So my parents are, I always tell them, sorry, mommy, close enough, but far enough.
Yeah,
You know what
yeah.
I mean? I know they're going to listen to this and say, Mina. So when I was able to come back home and I was able to have this position and I knew, okay, this is my community. I know South Florida and I know what's important to families here, what's important to people. And I, am a mom as of 4 years ago. And I was nervous. We have such a beautiful, generous benefit of 6 months maternity
It's
leave.
amazing.
And you have so much guilt taking it. But I thought, this is my moment to rest and take care of myself because you can't pour from an empty cup,
Yeah.
right? And with our careers, it's so much giving of our energy and giving of everything that this was the moment for me to just regroup myself, even though I did struggle on leave. But I heard somebody tell me, and they said, being a mom doesn't derail your career. It refocuses it. And I cannot tell you how much that holds true for me now being a parent and doing, we do drowning stories. And unfortunately, too often, but now as a mom, my voice is shaking when I'm doing those stories. And I think people see that and they want to, when they're watching, they want to feel like they can connect with us. They want to feel as though we're not just robots doing the news,
Yeah.
right? So it's a delicate balance that I think we try to find of that empathy, but also delivering the facts.
Yeah. And I do think it has shifted a little bit. I think before, this is like old school, I'm going to age myself. Like, back in the day, I feel like before like social media, that they were unable to see the human side of who was really delivering the news. It was like, obviously, we're always very objective, but I think there is a nice little window where they get to see the human side of you. And I think by humanizing us, it also makes us feel more connected and it builds a stronger relationship with our viewers. Is there any, and I know they're so hard to choose, but like, was there a moment that you think of where you're like, oh my God, like emotionally, like I'm carrying a lot of this weight that, that I'm presenting. And sometimes you become, and I know that this is, it's tough to say, but we do so many of these stories,
Yes.
right? That you never want to become numb to them. It's always finding like every story matters and every story, has its purpose. But there is, I think, a must when it comes to like kind of disconnecting, right? When you go home and like, how are you able to kind of shut it down and focus on the babies, on your kids?
I think that is something that I work on every single day. I start physically. When I get home, I have to change out of my dress. I don't know what it is, but I feel like I'm carrying the energy of the stories. As soon as I get home, I have to change into, loungewear or something that's different. And especially when I'm getting into the bed with the kids and I just feel like being in my work dress, I feel like as though I'm carrying the stories
So
with me.
important,
It is so
yes.
bizarre. It's just a mental thing. So I immediately shift and get into mom mode. And I try to disconnect as much as I can. We don't watch the news when we don't have to. It's funny, the other day I had my niece and my son at the station. I was just giving them a tour, and it was the Surfside condo collapse anniversary. And my niece, it was the first time at the station, and she was talking about, all the fun things. But then she asked, why did the building collapse? And I didn't know how to answer that. I did not know how to answer that. And she said, what happened after the building collapsed? And she's 7, but it was just one of those things that I was just like, she left me speechless because I was like, you saw so many cool things at our studio, at our station. And that was the one thing that she asked about. So it's just about compartmentalizing and not internalizing these stories, because it's the only way that we can do it. I really struggled with Parkland as well. I wasn't a mom yet, but my co-anchor lost his babysitter in that. So I remember he would be anchoring about the tragedy, and during commercial breaks would just take a minute. It's hard.
I know.
It's even hard so many years after, right? But
So Parkland was, for those who don't know,
Yeah.
was a shooting here in South Florida. It actually was Valentine's Day. These children went to school like a normal day, and they were victims to a school shooting. And it truly marked, I think, our community because, and I think every time we had to report a shooting, and it makes us more aware. And I shared the story on Instagram the other day. I picked up Ford, and the week before that, I had been fighting with him because every time he came home from summer camp, he either left behind a water bottle or his trunks or his like rash guard. And I was like, Ford, every time you change, you need to like check, do you have everything? Put it in the bag. So I picked him up as soon as I got back from Texas, and he was like, Mom, I have everything in my backpack. He was like so proud and so happy. And I was like, the point in time, I was like, I don't care. It doesn't matter. I don't care if you're missing everything. It just puts everything into perspective.
It does.
Right? And the
does.
idea, and I know it sounds so cliche to say, the idea of dropping off your child and having the blessing to pick them up that afternoon. I know that we practice that sense of gratitude constantly, but when you have to report on something like a school shooting, like, anything that takes away children's lives, you're like so much more grateful. So I do think it's a blessing in disguise that we get to have that perspective reminded constantly.
It's true.
Right?
Seeing the darkest of days for people just brings us gratitude and guilt. I don't know if you experienced this, but at the end of a very tough story like Parkland, when I was walking my dog that afternoon, and I felt such guilt in the peace of walking my dog when I knew not too far away from us in our own community was happening this devastation. And I texted my coworker who was struggling himself, and he said, take a snapshot of those moments of solitude and remind yourself of that when you're in the depths of the tragedies that we're covering. And that stuck with me so hard, because that's the piece that we have to remind ourselves that is so important when we are covering these stories that take such a toll on ourselves, because it's the only way that we can report successfully and bring these stories to these families is by making sure that we're taking care of ourselves.
I do like that we're in a safe enough space that we feel like we're vulnerable, because like I said at the beginning, I think sometimes on camera you don't want to come across like you're breaking down, even though I do think people they're forgiving, right? They understand that it's hard. One of my colleagues actually this week couldn't get through a sentence also. She has a daughter, and as she was reading just simply the bios of these girls that lost their life in Camp Mystic in Texas, she could not get through, like, even reading. Like, I remember the line she was reading in Spanish was like, this little girl, she loved to eat spaghetti. She could not even get through the sentence. So what has worked for you, Shelley? What has worked for you when you're in that moment on the air to get through it?
My co-anchor, Roxanne Vargas, is also a mother to 2 boys, and we hold each other up, honestly. Sometimes we have to pinch ourselves, or we do kind of just like physical things where we can disconnect from the story, or we don't fully listen to the package, what we call it, the story, just to take a moment to disconnect, because we know if we watch that story, we're going to completely break down. But it's also having the knowledge of what you're doing, right? But understanding, I think, the great responsibility that we have, and that truly is kind of our North Star, knowing that this is a responsibility that we have, this is a duty that we have to bring these stories to these families, and we're doing a big job, and there comes a lot of responsibility, and I think that helps. And therapy.
I always think also like finding the purpose behind your job, right?
Yeah.
Because there's so much sacrifice, like you said, a time. There's so much that you're giving away from spending time with your children, that if you focus on the purpose of your job, okay, why am I doing this? Why am I telling this story? Why am I, like the why behind what you're doing, at least for me, brings me so much more peace, right? Like there's a purpose behind it. It's like we want to help people. We want to get the information out there. We want to like, and sometimes we change people's life, right? Like we could get people to help these people. And like, it's kind of like finding the why behind everything. And I always remind my team also, like, let's focus on the why we're doing this, right? Let's talk about working with another mom. I think it's interesting you brought your colleague up, because for me also, I work with a female co-anchor. She's also a mom. We're actually pregnant together. So it's been an interesting journey. She has a little girl, I have a little boy. We parent very differently as well. But it's nice. It's nice to kind of have that. What has it been like for you to have another mother on your
Everything,
side?
especially because her boys are older. So it is so helpful. And every time she's dealing with something with the kids, I'm like, okay, send me your Cliff Notes, send me your Spark Notes for later when I'm going through the same thing. So I'm just grateful.
How old are her boys?
Her boys are, sorry, Rox, if I get this wrong, it's 11 and 8, I want to say, 8 or 11. We've been together for 5-6 years, Roxy and
By the way, for
myself.
those who don't understand, like having a co-anchor is like another marriage.
It's your best friend.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's like your
truly.
best friend, like another relationship that's like as important probably as the other relationship, because you spend so much time with them.
Yes.
So like having that relationship healthy and work is such a blessing. And you do have to invest in it. You do have to make it work, because number one, the audience could see the chemistry when it works and when it doesn't work. Like you can't fake that. And also it makes it such a pleasant experience to come to work and sit beside someone that gets you, right?
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's so funny. We actually say, I speak Rox. I speak Shelley. When we're just trying to make sense of something and no one understands what we're understanding except for my co-anchor, that's when we're like, okay, I speak Rox. I speak Shelley, because we just understand. We even sometimes dress alike and we don't even mean to or coordinate. So we spend a lot of time together, but that is truly everything. And that relationship is everything. And it's one that I nurture and I foster. And I hope, she feels that as well. And we lean on each other when we're doing these stories, because it's the only way to get through. It's the only way to get through. And people, right? It's our village.
Yeah.
That's how we get through. How do you do when you travel or when you're covering these stories? When you're actually when you're out in the field, does it hit you when you get to the hotel at the end of the night and things are quiet? Is that when it hits you?
Yeah, you know what? So I'll tell you two different experiences. So 2 years ago, we had, I lose track of time. So Uvalde for me was very, very tough. Remember, I got on the plane. Ford was very little. I want to say maybe it was like 2.5, 3 at that point. Uvalde was also another horrific school shooting in Uvalde, Texas. And they flew us very early on that time. I remember like it had happened in the morning. We were like on the next flight to San Antonio. And it was the first time that I sat on the plane, and I kind of felt guilty that I was leaving my child to go tell the story, to kind of report on this. Like, it was kind of like the first time I was leaving Ford behind. And then this time around with Texas, I just cried about the details of the story, because when Ford asked me the question, like, why did this happen? Like, why did God let this happen? And not having an answer for that, just really, and I remember sitting on the plane and I was so tired. It was an early flight. They flew me like the first flight Sunday morning, actually, Miami, San Antonio. And I just like started listening to praise music, and I just started crying and crying. And I cried so much on the plane, just thinking about, he's in summer camp. These girls were in camp. It's just like, and again, I didn't have that much information at that point. I just knew it was dark. They were in their camp. They were sleeping. It was just all the details and all the the pictures of the girls. I was just like, and then once I landed in San Antonio, it was like, okay, let me
Go mode.
Yeah, like I gotta get to work. I gotta find stories. I gotta like walk the grounds. I was so like emotionally drained by the time I got there that I was like, okay, let me shift gears and like my train of thought and just focus on getting work done. And then the days were so long
Yeah.
and it was so hot. And it was just like emotionally so draining all the time. Every interview I did like made me want to cry. And I was just like fighting it back. So when I would get to my hotel, remember the first night we stayed like 2 hours away because we still hadn't found a hotel. And then they moved us to Kerrville the second night. You're just so tired. You're just so tired that I don't think it gives you time to kind of process everything. On the way back, on the plane, I cried again. So I cried on the plane on the way there and I cried on the way back. And in between, you just kind of like focus on getting work done and meeting the deadline. Because, you know, aside from that, you have to balance between getting emotionally like, hey, you're getting like punched back to back with all these stories and details and just seeing what happened and just like trying to process the force of nature and what it was able to do and like the lives that it took and the damage that it caused, that you're getting hit with all these details, but you're also trying to like meet a deadline and like be ready for the live shot and kind of connect. And it's just like, it doesn't allow you, I think, to really sit in it and process it all. So when you do have those moments of silence and kind of like times where you're just not able to do anything else, which is like flying back home, that's when you're like, okay, you know, and you're right. I think you do come back with a sense of gratitude, a different perspective about things that you thought were important, literally like a few days before.
Yes.
And again, these are things that as humans, I think we go back to like the routine, you know, and
A week later, we're
yes,
back to, yeah.
I mean, I have to be honest, like it's a human, I don't know if it's human nature or like our defense mechanism, but we're creatures of routine, right? So routine is, okay, let me go, and kind of like, but these things definitely force you to take a pause and analyze things and like have a new perspective. And what I'm hoping is that all this tragedy leaves us like long-lasting lessons that we carry with us for the benefit of our family, for the
Yes.
benefit of our children, that make us better mothers afterwards.
And I would say it does, because I think just the way we parent, we're very careful when we're out in public or in parks or around the pool. We're very stringent about making sure they get swim lessons. I think
I'm
in
gonna
that
ask you,
regard,
because they ask me
yes.
this all the time and I never know what to say because I don't know, I can't really tell if it affects me or not. Are you more paranoid now as a parent because of all the information you know? Like, do these stories make you so aware that you become more like, how do you balance that?
Yes, I do.
Really?
I do.
Okay.
And that's a balance I'm still trying to figure out. That is a balance. My kids are young right now, but when they start driving or when they get in high school, that for me will be very difficult for me because I see what happens.
Yeah.
What happens when you're not completely in control of their everyday lives. Right now, we see them most of the time when they're, unless
Like
they're in
water
school.
safety for me was the one thing that like,
Same.
before I was a mom, I did a story, an interview with a family here in South Florida who lost their daughter in their own pool during a long family weekend. The entire family was in the pool. She has a great testimony. She's a woman of faith, the mom. She's a psychologist, actually, a therapist psychologist. And her story, like, and I don't even think I had 40. I don't think I was a mom yet, but it was like, I knew the second I had a baby, that for me was like number one priority, like water safety.
Yeah.
She had to swim. Like, I had this like, and I don't know if it's healthy for us to have this sense of like extra awareness or
Yeah.
like all this information and these stories that we hear and that we know. Like, how healthy is that for us?
I think we have to make it healthier for us by seeking help. Otherwise, we can't live in this hamster wheel and not take care of ourselves. For me, it almost manifests itself as health anxiety because I do a lot of health stories.
Okay,
So I
that's right.
cover a lot of super young women in the prime of their lives and suddenly they're diagnosed with cancer. I mean, for me, that stuff just sticks with me and I can't shake that. And that's what I'm working on. So it's almost made me super stringent about my own health
Right.
habits, right? But my kids too. And I don't want to put those fears into them. So it's a balance that we have to find to make sure that we're not sending our kids into a panic mode or
Yeah.
having them live in fear because of what we witness every single day. We chose this career, but our kids didn't.
Right.
So when we are almost putting, or I don't want to say pawning off our anxieties on them, that's probably not healthy either. So I think that's what I'm currently trying to work on.
I talked to my therapist a while ago about this when Ford was very little, before he was even like verbal or asking questions. Now they get in this age where like they're curious about everything. And she was like, you know what, you know what it's like to have news to use, right? So turn this into news you could use,
Oh, that's great advice.
not into news that's going to rob you from peace and like generate like how do
Oh
at
my
the end of the
gosh,
day,
that
like
is such great advice.
so I'm like, okay, how is this news to use? Okay, so let's say like, we have a story, like a diagnosis that you're like, breaks your heart. And you're like, okay, how am I using this, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna do my checkups. I'm gonna live a healthier life. I'm gonna like figure out like what, this person thought worked for them, what didn't work for them. And kind of just like trying to turn that into something that would benefit us, and like we could take the bigger lesson from it. And I think that's why people share their stories, right? Because they're like, listen, this happened to me. I'm hoping
Yes.
it doesn't happen to you. And whatever I can do to avoid that, that's why I'm saying my story, why I'm sharing my story. But it's hard. It's hard to like.
And it takes such
It
strength for
actually
them to
happens. I don't know
share.
if it happens to you, but like in my algorithm, sometimes like if I'm on TikTok on Instagram, like the other day, what was the one that I fell into this black hole of like when they're little, it was a little boy walking to his room and the mom's like, he walks in and he's like, oh my God, Mom, this is amazing. It was like a dinosaur wall. He had done like a beautiful dinosaur mural for this child. And then it forwards to him being,
Oh, yes. Why did you send that to me? I told my friend. Yes.
I'm like, this needed a warning. So it was like the whole reality of like how fast our children grow,
How
right?
fleeting it all is.
And it was like, and it was the same little boy, but now he's older. Now they're painting through they're covering the dinosaur into this blue. Oh, I don't know why. So I'm like in this algorithm of like watching our children grow so fast.
Yeah.
And then I changed. I'm like, okay, let me look into travel. So I could, because it adapts into whatever you're looking for, right? Like whatever you're searching, I'm like, let me redirect my algorithm. Because it's very easy to fall into this emotionally draining hole of information and content.
And we are surrounded by the endless content, which I think goes back to your point about people being more accepting of our vulnerability on air because they are consuming news on TikTok and they are consuming news on Instagram, and people are being vulnerable and they're sobbing through whatever they're talking about. So I think for us to almost look as though we're unattached or detached so greatly,
It's not authentic.
it's off-putting, right? It's not authentic. So I think us being vulnerable, they're used to seeing that all over, their other sources of media or how they're consuming content. I think it would be a disservice for us not to be real.
Yeah. Again, I try not to, but sometimes it's just so hard.
It is.
It's so hard. And I have this like weird way of crying where like I can't even get a word out. I can't even like, I know that the second I get a word, it's same thing with laughing, by the way.
I was just going to say.
Like, same thing with laughing attacks. I just kind of like, this is one laughing attack where like my colleague, Borja, he's one of our correspondents. He's very funny. Like offline, he's very funny. So during commercial break, he'll be saying like this funny random stuff. Like he's not even trying to be funny, but he just comes across very funny. And then like he has the ability to be like 3, 2, 1, and he just like.
And you have to turn it.
Right. But sometimes it takes me a little while to like get over me cracking up or whatever he was saying. So just the same way that it happens with, emotional moments, funny moments are very hard also to control yourself. So my way of doing it is just like, I can't even talk. Like my co-anchor already knows and she'll have to jump in.
Same.
Which is like, that's when you're like so grateful for them.
For them, because they speak your language and they know, okay, she's off the rails. Let me go and pick this up. Usually our director works really well with us, just goes straight to the package if we can't go, or just works around us in post-production or during production when he knows, okay, these girls have lost their mind. Let's go to weather.
What do you think has made you, after becoming a mother, how did you become a better journalist, a better news anchor?
I let myself feel the stories deeply because I understood what was at stake. The stakes are higher. You understand. I'm trying to vocalize this because you just have a better understanding. Not to say if you're not a mother, you don't, but it's just a different wavelength that you're on when you become a
At
parent.
least for you, that was your experience.
That was
like,
my
you felt it.
experience. And yeah, I just leaned on, honestly, it's just a balance. I wish I had the right answers for you. Do you feel as though you're still trying to?
I think there's a few things that I think have made me better. I think it's definitely, for me at least, made me more, in a way, committed to my work because I rely on it, because my livelihood now,
Right.
like like just the basic, right? Like, let's break
Yes,
it down.
we need a paycheck.
I need a paycheck. Like, my son depends on me. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think before I was a mom, you have more freedom to be like, oh, whatever, I'll try something else. Or maybe this. Here I felt like a sense of like responsibility and a little bit of more like financial pressure
Yes.
to deliver, to be good, to do a good job. Like, I really have become more careful with my work, right?
Yeah.
So that was one shift for me after motherhood. I became more grateful, but also more careful and more conscious of my work. I mean, I always loved what I did, and I was always, gave it 100%. But I feel now more like, okay, there's a different component to it. There's a different person that relies on this paycheck, right? So I'm more aware of that. I'm also more grateful, obviously, for it, that I'm able to provide for my child and provide for myself, and kind of like give him this life because of what I do, and I love what I do. So I do think it's a blessing that I'm able to provide for my family by doing something that I truly love and I truly think I'm really good at. So that also changed. And it also made me more present in whatever I was doing, right? So after I became a mom, I think before I had Ford, I blended a lot of things. I was like, having a cocktail with a friend, but I was still thinking about work, or if I was at work, but I was already thinking about the weekend plans. And I was like really multitasking all the time. After Ford, I really taught myself to be present in whatever I was doing. So when I'm at work, I'm at work. I'm like, obviously in the back of your mind, there's always like the little voices, and you kind of think, obviously, of our babies and our children and family and all that stuff. But I think I'm more present. When I'm with my child, I try to disconnect. I'm like, okay, we're playing in the beach and we're like swimming and we're like, so it had made me more present whatever I'm doing at that time.
Because he's created your North Star. He is your North Star now. And I think that's also, I can relate to that because it's that non-negotiable. Whereas we might have to make some decisions and it's a little fleeting and we're willing to go with it. But now you have a kid and you're like, okay, this is what I'm willing to do. This is what I'm not willing to do. For me, schedule is a big deal. I will make sacrifices, absolutely. But there are certain sacrifices that now as a mom, I feel as though I'm not inclined to take.
Yeah.
I've missed out on a lot of stuff because of hurricanes. I've canceled a lot of trips. And I've made a lot of sacrifices during holidays and long hours and weekends. But I have to be honest with you that now as a parent, there are some sacrifices that I will no longer make because it's going to have a direct impact on my children. And I've left vacation early. And I think, I don't know, I haven't been put in that situation recently as a parent, but I want to say, unless obviously the story warrants it, but I'm not just going to fill in another position where, somebody's out, they called out, let me go and turn my day around and put my kid in childcare when I don't need to because, I'm going to have a line where I say, this is it.
Right.
Creating that boundary. I guess boundaries have been clearer for me.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we have a bigger purpose now. So we have a different priority, right? So not saying that we're not doing a great job at work, but we definitely have something that's more important, right? How has your perspective of your mom changed after you became a mom?
Oh, she's everything. Yeah. She's going through some health issues. So it's tough for me to talk about her, but she's just so resilient and she's so tough. And I'm like, Mommy, I'm sorry for everything I've done. I get it because now as a mom and now as a mom to a daughter and I see her sass and her spunk, she's definitely Puerto Rican, I tell her. And I just have a lot of gratitude for my parents and their patience. And I can understand why they bent rules for us sometimes. And I just have so much compassion for her and so much grace for the good, the bad. They gave us such a beautiful childhood, my parents, and I'm so grateful for that. And they instilled Spanish and English, which I know we're very passionate about instilling that in our kids. So there's just so much more gratitude. And
Yeah.
I'm thankful that she is here, and I'm thankful that my dad is here so that I can express that gratitude to them.
My mom went through some health issues last year. She went through a diagnosis of breast cancer. And I remember thinking always, she's such a strong woman. She's a tough cookie. She raised two girls, and we're both like, had this like spunk to us. And I remember thinking that the first time I really saw her like shrink like a little girl was fear when she heard that diagnosis. And that's what broke my heart. Because she's such a strong, I'm like, wait a minute. Like you picture your mom is always like, okay, she's got
She's
this,
the
they're
rock.
strong, like they're the rocks. And then to see her consume in fear was like heartbreaking. She got through it, and she was so brave and with so much grace and, and resilience, and she was great, and she got through her treatment, and she's good. But it definitely made me more also aware too that I'm not gonna have her forever and ever, right? Like I've always been so grateful, and she's very involved. Obviously, she helps me tons with Ford, and Ford's obsessed with his grandma, his Abu. But there are moments where I become more grateful to her in every moment, like every trip that I get to include her in, or every time I get to spend time with her. I'm just like, okay, I'm soaking it in because, it's like the reality of time. Like the cycle of life. It's just.
It is so true. The
Like,
cycle.
all I do is like I pray. I'm like, please, many, many years for my mom, health for me. Like now we just want health, so we get to spend more time, with our little ones.
Did you find when she was in her weakest moment, you had to then be the rock,
Oh,
and you
yes.
couldn't grieve yourself? That's what I find with my mom. She was my rock, and then here it is. I find myself, wow, wait, I need to be that foundation, that firm foundation for her. It almost delays your ability to grieve, and then you find yourself grieving
And it's
later.
funny because my sister was very emotional. She's like, but what does that mean? She was like, I'm like, okay. So I got into like production mode. I'm like, guys, this is what we're gonna do.
Fix.
Yes, we're gonna call the doctor. I'm gonna call the surgeon. I'm gonna call this. Like, what's the, because then I also learned to navigate the system, right? Because until you have a diagnosis like that, you don't understand how it works. You have to get a primary, then you have to get a reference, and you have to get an appointment. Then, oh, but I don't have an appointment until like 3 months. Like, no, we're not waiting 3 months. Like, it taught me about the system, and I got in major production. Like, okay, let's get this done. Let's, make the calls. Like, call whoever had to. I knew someone who knew someone who knew someone, and that for me was, I guess, my emotional defense mechanism to be like, okay, let me handle all this, and then I could grief about it.
That was how you coped.
Yes. And it was very helpful.
Yeah, certainly, because you know so much about the community, and you know the resources going back to the career that you do. So because of your job, oh, wait, we need to call this person. I know this person. You have contacts. You know the system, and know how sometimes we have to advocate for ourselves. We can't just lean back.
It's also a good reminder how important networking is, even amongst women. So one of our guests, Laura Posada, who's amazing, her sister is one of the top breast cancer surgeons here in Miami at Baptist. So I called Laura, and I'm like, hey, Laura, my mom just got diagnosed. Dr. Jane, she had already treated some of my friends and one of my bosses as well. So she's amazing. Dr. Jane Mendez, big shout out to her. Because there was a human side to her way of treating people that my mom needed in that moment of her life. Some patients need a different type of surgeon, but God put her in my path, and she was the perfect person to hold my mom's hand. Obviously, besides performing an amazing, impeccable surgery on her, she had a lumpectomy, but she was just the emotional side to her. It was incredible. She was exactly who my mother needed.
Their careers are very much like ours, surgeons and doctors, where they see so much and they have to take care of themselves as well because of the gravity of their job and the responsibility. So to find somebody that you mentioned who had compassion and had bedside manners that has so much weight, that's hard to find sometimes, right?
How do you prepare yourself to like having to explain to your children, like once they get older, like what does mommy do? Like why is she away? Because I don't know if you get this from your son yet, but like when I would drop off, I always do drop offs. I love doing drop offs in the morning because I work in the afternoons. And he'll sometimes be like, but why do you have to go to work? Why are you going to work? Do you have to go to work today? And I was like, Ford, I go to work every day. Let's get that down. Whenever you go to school, I go to work Monday through Friday. So, okay. But having to answer like why you're away, right? Because they love to be with us.
And thankfully, they can still watch us from home.
Yeah.
Because if they didn't know what we do or couldn't see what we do, that would be even harder for them to cope with why we're gone for 9 hours a day. And somebody told me is make sure you invite them into your job. Make sure they know it is what you do. So he's come to the station several times. He's come to the studio and he understands what I do. He sees me on TV, he waves and he's like, "Mommy, why aren't you waving back?" I had to explain that to me. And then when we're watching in the morning, he'll say, "They started without you. They started without you." You know, it's just the morning. It's the morning anchors. It's not us, puppy. And so it's just inviting him to what we do
good.
and giving him that exposure to my job makes it feel as though, oh, that's just something that takes mommy away from me. But no, he knows what it is. He knows exactly what it is. It's not just an ambiguous thing that pulls him away from me. And I think that's really helped him understanding what we do. The topics he obviously doesn't understand. And somebody asked me while I was doing a speaking engagement, do you let your kids watch news and will you? And I really wasn't sure. Right now, they don't really understand. He'll ask me when he's seeing some of the footage, but I don't have it high enough where he hears those words, the trigger words, right, that would ask questions or would lead to questions. But I don't know when they get older how I'm going to do that. I think I grew up with television,
Me too.
La Noticia,
Yeah.
on in the background.
Yeah.
Did it make me a little paranoid because I was always seeing, you know, Spanish television doesn't hold back on what
Yeah,
they
yeah,
show.
yeah. Yeah,
So
yeah.
I grew up watching those images, and I don't know if I necessarily want my
Yeah.
kids seeing that. But I don't know. I guess there's still time, right?
I know. I also do think it's such a different generation, right? Like they have so much more access to content. So like, right now I'm just like, well, I'm trying not to give him too much content, but I'm curating everything he like watches and sees, and it's just like it's hard to, you know. But it's funny because now he thinks instead of news, he calls it trabajo. He's like, "Oh, you're gonna watch trabajo again?" Like, because I'll wake up and I'll put on like the Today Show, whatever in the morning, you know, like anything in the morning, and he's like, "Oh, are you watching trabajo again?" So in his mind, like news means
Trabajo.
trabajo for mom. But he is an age where I like to explain, but it's funny because it's like breaking it down for like a 5-year-old where he kind of understands, well, I did this and I shared this in the podcast, one episode. You know, he got lost at Target and my mom, he was with my mom, and I came home and she was like really worked up about it. She was like crying and he was like upset about it because, you know, she felt like she left him and she felt like she kept running away. So in that desperate moment, I was like, I want him to get a little bit of sense of fear when he's alone, because right now he just like walks away, right?
Yes.
So I showed him like this reel that I found on YouTube about like child adoption attempts, like people trying to take children away,
Was
like
it
in
tailored to
different stores,
kids?
right? So it was like this, like I think it was like AI narration. Like,
Oh, okay.
this child is 5 years old and he's sitting in his shopping cart. Wait, in the next few minutes when the mom turns around. So it was kind of like scary, no? Where he was
Alarming.
like, yes, it was alarming, but like it was okay, like, you know, and he just sat through it and he was like, okay. I was like, okay, so you see how easy it could be for someone to take you away, and then, you know, like that's so scary. He was like, I'm not scared. Like, I'll be like, come here. And I'm like, no, Ford. Like, it didn't, I think it backfired on me, but I do want him to be a little bit, you know, again, age appropriate. I always ask my therapist, okay, what can he process in his mind? You don't want to dump so much information that he's like, you know, so it's like little by little, like expose him to like the realities of the world, right? Because we also don't want to like, you do want to like keep them in a bubble. But I also want him to be a little bit more cautious of like the possibilities of some things happening, right?
Yeah.
So it's like finding that balance between not traumatizing my child, but also like making him aware of like this, you know, things like this could happen.
And you hope that when he watches that video, when you ask him to do things, it's not just because he's obeying, but he understands
Right,
the consequences.
right,
That's the
yes.
ultimate goal, is when we're driving these lessons into these kids, we want them to understand why we say it, that they're not just doing and listening to us because they're
I say so,
obeying,
yeah.
right? That they understand we do this because our job is to keep you safe and healthy and happy. Happy, controversial, right? I guess we were not necessarily responsible for their feelings and vice versa, but you know, you just want to tell them why these things are important and hope that when they are facing those situations, they understand and filed all those lessons in their head and they
And,
follow
and,
through.
and you want it's always surprising to me how smart they are, right? Because sometimes you'll see one thing, and for example, like with the crossing of the streets, I don't know if you saw it in a cartoon or something happened. I think it's this like soccer cartoon where like the child almost gets run over by a car and it's like very dramatic. He doesn't really, but it's a cartoon. But it's like, and he's like, he realized. So they understand the
Yes.
consequence. Okay, if you don't hold my hand, like a car could come and hit you. So like, so it's like finding that balance. But thank you so much, Shelley. I could talk to you forever now.
Really, it is this is therapy because it's so
I know.
nice to
It
talk
is
to
a
other
safe
people who
space.
understand
It
what
is.
it's a very unique career, and we both obviously love what we do and we're grateful for this opportunity. It's a platform that gives us a lot of exposure to things that are heartbreaking and also uplifting. And
To close it up, what do you tell people when they ask you that, right? When they're like, hey, how do you do it? Like, how do you do it? Just like a quick answer to that. Like, how do you push
a
through it?
village, leaning on other people and finding that delicate balance. It's still a work in progress, but compartmentalizing and not internalizing those stories. I think the camera helps filter some of that, but it's not taking this with me, not taking it home. Because otherwise we can't do our job successfully and serve our community the way that we should.
Yeah, and then come home and be super moms
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Pamela, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Till next time.